everybody, it's Kendra here. Welcome back to This DIY Mom Life. I'm really excited to share with you the first video in my new series on knitting basics. So these are things that may be great if you are a beginner, but they may be ways that you can expand your knitting knowledge if you're moving into more of an intermediate knitter as well. So today I'm going to go over all sorts of knitting supplies and try to break it down into what you need to get started and what are some things that might be nice to look forward to as you kind of get deeper into the hobby. So I know there's a ton of ways people get interested in knitting, whether it's you see something someone made that is so beautiful you want to make something yourself. Maybe you walk through the craft store and look at all the yarn and think of things you'd like to make. Or maybe you found a beautiful hand dyed skein of yarn that you want to use. So wherever you're coming from, it is a great place to start. And I'd really suggest that if there's something you're dying to make, figure out how to make that thing. Because if you're motivated to do it, I'm sure you can find a way to make it happen. However, if you're just thinking, I just want to dip my toes in, see if I really like this knitting thing, then these may be some places to start where you can have some less expensive supplies, try it out, see what you think, and as you enjoy it more, start adding to your collection or to your abilities as you go. So I'm going to dive in to some of the things I want to show you, going over some yarn options as well as needle options and a little bit into pattern as well, and hopefully that will help you out as you are getting ready to start knitting. Now if you want to see more videos in this series, I encourage you to subscribe, and there will be more coming out, everything from beginning knit stitches all the way to reading your knitting and gauge swatching, things of that nature. So let's get started. So I know if you've taken a walk through maybe this store at Michael's or even at Walmart, you can find a whole variety of different types of yarns and needles. And if you are new or you don't know the difference, it can be extremely overwhelming to try to figure out what it is that you actually need. So that is what I'm hoping to kind of go through today. And really you need a type of yarn and a type of needle, and that is all you need to get started. I mean, there's some YouTube videos that would be helpful as far as figuring out the how-to part of it. But as far as supplies goes, yarn and needle, those are the basics here. So I do want to share a little bit about what to look for in each of those things, which will hopefully help get you started. So to begin with, we're going to talk about needle choices. Now, if you go take a walk through the craft store or the yarn store, you will notice that there's not only different sizes of needles, as you can see here, but there's also different styles. Now, each of these styles comes down to somewhat personal preference, but also just usefulness in different types of projects. And so I just want to go through them a little bit just to give you that basic understanding of what it is you're seeing. So if we look to the middle here, you'll see this here, which is a straight needle. These are quite small. They also come longer, and of course, through a variety of sizes. They're pointy on one end, and they have something to stop at this end here. Now, for me growing up, this is what I thought of as a traditional knitting needle. And you can get straight needles in metal. These ones are actually plastic. They just came in a kid's set. And there are many people who knit many things on straight needles, like scarves or even blankets, things like that. I personally never use straight needles. That's not to say they're not a good choice, but they are, to me, less useful than a circular needle. So here we will see these are called circular needles because they have the needle tip and then they're attached by a cord. Now, circular needles can come in many different types of material as well. This one is made out of bamboo and it has a nylon cord. We have metal needles. These are often both of these styles are easy to find at Michael's, Walmart, that sort of thing. These ones here are metal and they have a stiffer nylon cord. These are another circular needle that are a stainless steel, and they have a coated metal cord. So they are very smooth and it's a more flexible cord as well. Now, these are not found at a big box store. These are some I ordered on Amazon. They're called Chiago needles. They are my favorite. But if you're looking at a big box store, you will find similar to this as well. I would say these two are the most common. These are just a clover needle. And again, it's not that that's necessary, but it's just something to keep an eye out for. This is what they look like. And circular needles come in different cord lengths. So you can see the length of this cord versus the length of this cord. They might be used for different projects. Now, if you can imagine the difference, you can see that if you have a needle like this, it's easy to knit something called in the round, which means you're going around in circles rather than just going back and forth as you would on a straight needle. On a straight needle, you would start at one end of one needle, and you would knit to this side, then you would switch hands and knit to this side again, and you keep on switching in that fashion. Whereas on a circular needle, if you're knitting something in the round, you can just keep going around and around and around, and you never get to the end of a needle. However, with a circular needle, you can also knit flat, and by knitting flat, that means that you would have a section, say a scarf, on your needle, and you would knit from the tip, you'd knit all your stitches, and then you would just turn it over and then knit all your stitches going back. And it works the same way, it's just the needles are attached. A benefit to that is it's hard to lose stitches because they are on the cord. However, you may get a little more mixed up on which needle comes next or things like that as you are beginning to knit. Another style of needles you will find is called double pointed needles. That is this kind right here, and this just means they usually come in sets of 4 or 5. And they are, as the name suggests, pointed on both ends. Double pointed needles are usually used for knitting things in the round if you're not going to use a circular needle. So when you're knitting in the round, you would use 3 and then use the 4th one to knit each needle. So imagine you have something round like a sock or a hat. You split the circle of needles on 3, or you can do it over 4 needles. And then you use your working needle here and you would knit across this section. And then this needle would be empty. This one would now have the stitches, and you would choose the next one going around the circle to knit and replace the stitches with. Now in the past, I think it was quite popular to use straight needles for knitting flat and double pointed needles for knitting in the round. Now that's a very valid, useful choice if that's the way you want to go. But I think a lot of this type of knitting has been replaced by using circular needles for everything. At least I know that's how I knit. Now you'll see this set here, and it may look a little bit different, but this is called an interchangeable set. This one is made by Boy. It's found at Michael's as well. And when you open it up, you'll see all the needle sizes from size 2 all the way up to size, where are we at? 15 here. So quite small to quite large. Now within a set, the tips are separate from the cord. So this kind has a nylon cord, and these are found by different makers and different materials as well. And it's just a little screw on the end, and you will screw it on both ends, and you're able to knit in the round just like I was showing you on the circular needles. One of the benefits of an interchangeable set, they are more expensive up front. However, it's very easy to switch between sizes, and you can make almost anything with just one set like this. You can use it to make something flat, a small circle, or several sets come with joiner pieces, so you can hook 2 cords together and have a really long cord for knitting, say like a sweater or a blanket, or something larger like that. Sets also come with stoppers on the end in case you need to put some stitches on hold, which is useful when you're, say, splitting for sleeves when you're knitting a sweater, or other uses within your pattern. One of the other great things about an interchangeable set is that when you need to switch needle sizes, you don't have to switch the cord. So if you're knitting a hat, oftentimes the ribbing section at the part at the bottom will have a smaller needle size than the top part. So that means, say you're using a size 4 needle for the ribbing and you need to size up to a size 5. All you need to do is unscrew those ends, put on the size 5 ends, and away you go. Whereas if you're using a circular needle and you need to switch between sizes, you'll have to switch all of the needles on there onto your new needle. So as far as what you need to get started, it just depends what you see yourself doing. If you really want to get the supplies for one project, I would recommend just getting one needle. These would run between $5 and $10, and it will give you an idea of what you want. We'll talk about what size you might need when we get to the yarn type. However, if you see yourself doing a number of projects or wanting to try different yarn weights or different types of projects, I think investing in an interchangeable set fairly early on is most economical because you can do so many things with it, even if it is a larger investment up front. This type of set goes for around $50, but there's different options depending on what brand and everything you are looking for. So moving on, I want to talk about some different types of yarn. I pulled out a few different styles or kinds of yarn here. These two can both be found pretty much anywhere, meaning, well, this is a Michaels brand, but Bernat here is very common. It can be found like Walmart, Michaels, big box stores like that. And then I also picked out a skein that I dyed as well, or this is what a lot of hand dyed skeins will look like, twisted up like this versus in the ball. Now, when you have a yarn in the ball, you're ready to just get going. You don't have to worry about any other supplies. Whereas if you're starting with something that is hand dyed like this, it comes in a very big loop, and you are going to need some more equipment, such as a ball winder and a yarn swift to really get things started. And that might be if you found the perfect yarn where you want to start. However, for a lot of people, this will come a little bit later. Once you know that you are loving knitting, you want to get in deeper, use a variety of different types of yarn. So we're going to look at these other options here that can be found more readily available, and I want to kind of go through what you'll find on the label and what might be a good choice to get started. This here is Bernat Premium. One thing you want to check when you're looking at your label is what your fiber content is. So this is 100% acrylic, and you'll notice that at the craft store, most of their yarns are acrylic, most, if not all of the fiber content. Some have a percentage of wool, and there are a few wools available. I know at Michaels, a go-to for me is the Patton's Classic wool is a nice choice. However, you just have to pay attention because different types of yarn behave differently, and you might want something different depending on what you're making. So 100% acrylic isn't a lot of knitters' first choice. However, it is a great beginner choice. It's very easy to work with. I know sometimes once you get into nicer wools and things, you maybe don't enjoy it as much. But I think as far as making a choice that's economical, usually balls like this are very inexpensive. You can easily get a lot of yarn for like under $5, and there's a variety of colors and things like that available. It's just a good place to get started. So you'll notice that these two yarns are quite different in the thickness. This Bernat is quite a bit thicker than the wool-like loops and thread. And now this is just something to pay attention to when you're choosing your yarn and you're choosing your needle for your first project. I would say it is generally good advice to start with a thicker yarn because it is easier to see your stitches, to see how you're doing everything else, and you see progress a lot quicker on thicker yarn than you do with the thinner stuff. Thinner yarn will create a more delicate object in the end and is a really great choice for things like sweaters and other clothing, garments, things like that. And there's usually a lot of both available. If you are looking at the store, there is a number on the side of your ball that will tell you how thick it is. So hopefully you can see here. I know it's a little bit bright, but here it shows it's a medium number 4. And then it also gives you a recommended needle size and a recommended crochet hook size. So here it says a 5mm needle or a US 8 is recommended. So compare that to this thinner yarn, and it recommends a superfine 1 or a 2.75mm US size 2 as a recommended needle. So the needle size in relation to the yarn size determines your gauge, and your gauge is really how many stitches per inch. So when you have a thin yarn on a really small needle, you have a tight gauge. You have a lot of stitches packed into 1 inch. Compared to a larger yarn on a larger needle, you have a lot fewer stitches per inch. Now again, I would say that if this is your very first project, start with a thicker yarn and a larger needle, and it's the same techniques used on larger yarn as thinner yarn, but it's just kind of an easier way to get started. Now the number or the needle size recommended on the ball band does not mean that's the only needle size you can use. And everyone, the way they knit is a little bit different. So if you're a tight knitter, you might need to change your needle size. And we'll get into that, like I said, in an upcoming video all about gauge. But that's sometimes a good place to start if you have no idea, you've never knit before, and how would you know? So that would be what I would recommend, is to pick your yarn, pick something you love that you want to work on, that you like the feel of. I mean, if you don't like it in the ball, you're probably not going to like it knit up either. So for this, it recommends a US 8. This one here is a US 9, so it's a little bit larger than they recommend. I mean, I think you could use it, it would be fine. And if you're on a budget and you've been maybe lent some needles by, you know, a family member, or you go to the thrift store and you find some there, I mean, do your best. It doesn't have to be exact. If you're buying new, then you might want to buy the exact US size 8, just as they recommend. There's so much more I feel like I could get into, but I really want to break this into a little bit more of manageable bite-sized bits of information, so I really hope that this has been helpful. I would say if you're brand new, pick a needle, pick a yarn, get started. My next video is going to go over just the basic knit stitch and a very simple cast on that anybody can do, and so I hope you'll stick around to watch that next time. If you have any questions, please leave them down below. I will be watching for them and will do my best to answer. Otherwise, grab your yarn and let's get started.